Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our friend, Bill Pence. So, Bill, how's it going?
Going great. Good to be here. Thanks for the double warm welcome.
Yeah.
First one was actually better, so you know.
Yeah.
On that a little bit.
So, thanks for making out here. I mean, obviously you came from New York, so I really appreciate that. So we always like to start our fireside chat on a personal note. So we're gonna go way back when you were born. Where were you born? Where were you raised? What did your parents do? And talk about maybe a first entrepreneur experience as a child, or maybe the first program you wrote that you were proud of, maybe in high school, or.
Okay, sure. You tell me if this is the kind of stuff you want to hear, but I'll start. I was born. I'm a Virginian originally. You should know. My family has been in Virginia for, I don't know, hundreds of years or something. So I was the first one to really leave. I'm a New Yorker now for the last 25 years. But I was actually born in Maine. Because
Part of Maine.
Are you a fish fan?
Oh, I was raised in Maine.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Loring Air Force Base, Limestone. What, you
I was born at Loring Air Force Limestone.
Are you serious?
Are you kidding me?
Get out, serious. Get out.
I told that story, and that's like one of the you took.
I just took all your thunder. Sorry about that.
So I don't want to give away my age, but my father. So yes, my father was a Strategic Air Command tanker pilot, and I was born during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And my father was flying tankers over the North Pole, refueling B-52s. And my mother was on the base, pregnant with me, and they issued her a pistol for when the Russian paratroopers came in. So I always like to tell the story that I'm very calm. You know, like when sights go down, I'm not worried. Very calm because I was born when nuclear war was about to break out. But they have fish concerts there now. You know that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Air Force Base closed down. It's like one of the longest runways in North America or something like that. But that's a weird coincidence.
It is. It's weird. The thing is, every time people say, "Limestone, mate, what's that?" You know what the story I always use? I say, "Well, do you know that movie War Games? Was that one scene, War Games?"
That's right.
Where it's like, oh, you know that part where the first bomb hit, and there was like that airman was like, "I'm still alive." That's Loring Air Force Base. I use that as our claim to fame.
Well, that's uncanny. That's crazy. I thought when you said you were raised in Maine, it was gonna be like Portland. I never.
No, it was Limestone, Maine. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's where I was. But then we. I was really raised in Virginia, actually in Northern Virginia, and so kind of went to school around here. Went to undergrad UVA. I think you already said that, right? And I guess I don't know what I should say about my entrepreneurial experience. It was a different era. Back then when you were 12, you couldn't have a startup like you can now. So I didn't have a startup, but I had a paper route, and I was a tinkerer. And actually, I was one of those kids where if my parents really knew what I was doing, I took a TV apart and I turned it into I was doing some physics experiments on this old TV. I probably almost could have killed myself. I actually touched, it was one of those old tube TVs. Those are actually really dangerous, and I...
Black and white, right?
Yeah, so I was a tinkerer. I wrote my first software on a Commodore 64. My parents gave away my Commodore 64. And I'm so bitter about this. I have to get it off my chest because I go home and they've still got like baby pictures everywhere. And I said, "Where's my Commodore 64?" Well, we threw that out. And people don't probably even know what a Commodore 64 is.
All the old guys are like, I remember that.
Yeah, didn't have a graphical package, didn't have a GUI, so I wrote a GUI for it. So.
Okay. Hashtag Startup Grind at William Pence CTO. It's going to show up here, so please tweet away. I'd like to go straight to the Napster story. You started with Napster, and you actually had a pretty long tenure there, 2001 to 2007. I know it's 15 years ago. But during that time, Sean Parker had declared bankruptcy during that time, and they sort of put you right in the middle of the mess, right? So, they were sort of trying to figure out what they're doing, right? With their P2P going to online music store, sort of like iTunes before iTunes. So, why did you decide to work for Napster? even with all that? What
You know, I don't know. It's weird, right? Because I worked at IBM 10 years before that. I worked at Watson Research Labs, which is kind of like Bell Labs for IBM, and I just got sick of it. You know, and I don't know why. And I wanted to do something kind of different. And I actually went off and started working on online music. But that was a really messy time. I mean, nothing was very linear back then. There were companies being created and a lot of struggling over the rights to the music. And the labels didn't want to give up the rights to the music. They wanted to control them themselves so they could actually have a direct relationship with consumers. And Napster was put into bankruptcy, so I really started there in the hard era, I'd say, which is we had to make money. And you know, so there was Napster, there was Rhapsody, there was Music Match. There were actually a bunch of companies starting to build what we at the time called subscription services. They're now called cloud music services. And I think we had a lot of people, not just myself, but a lot of people who had very far-ranging views of where this would ultimately go. It would be cloud-delivered, multiple devices. And so it was tough, though, because you know, you had people fighting over the rights. And I remember when he first crossed 1 million tracks, we thought, well, I got 1 million tracks. But if you're a music lover, that's really a frustrating experience, not a lot of music. And you would talk to the record labels, and they say, well, you have to enforce all the rights agreements, which if you know the music industry is, there are the labels, there's the performance societies, there's the publishers, of which there's thousands. You have to secure all these rights, and they're territorial, et cetera. And so we'd say, okay, we'll build a rights management system, and we'll build a database. So, you know, can I get like the feed of the rights? And like, you know, the feed is the filing cabinet over here. So you talk to these, you know, they're pulling out paper. And so it was complicated to build a rights management system, a subscription management system. There was no Stripe back then. I mean, you had to build this stuff from scratch. And we actually rolled out a system before iTunes launched. You could download tracks a la carte, or you could pay by the month in like a Spotify model. And we got up to about 1 million subs. But you know, the world just wasn't really ready for it. I mean, you didn't have iPhones, so it was kind of a desktop experience. You know, people were still burning CDs, but it was the right model. It really was. And
bad timing, though, right?
Yeah. So startup lesson number 1: timing matters. But it was a lot of fun, and working in the music industry was crazy. I mean, it was. You know, they didn't really understand technology. The one story I always tell is, you know, I had these weird out-of-body experiences, right, where the label guys, they didn't really know what they were doing. I got a call from the A&R guy at a label, and he's like, you know, it's just come to my attention that in an all-you-can-eat subscription service, you can record the music. And I said, yeah. I said, but I said, it's okay, but you can't do it. You can't do it faster than real time. Like, you can't do. I'm giving the technical answer. Like, you can't rip the catalog. You know, you can. And he said, yeah, but can you record it? I said, well, of course you can record it. I mean, you can listen to it. You can record it. Well, you know, well, that's not right. And I said, what do you want me to build a digital rights management system that goes all the way to the eardrum? And he's like, yeah. I mean, so it's just crazy. The expectations were out of whack, and you're trying to build something that consumers would like. You're trying to give them an experience, but it was like such a work in progress, and the whole industry was kind of being turned upside down. A little bit like what's happening in video right now with unbundling and cord cutting. Right, very, very reminiscent of that.
Right. Did you get to meet the Sean Parker and team?
I met Sean Fanning. I didn't meet Sean Parker, but I met more of the technical guys.
Okay. I was just wondering if you were hanging out with them, because I heard he's pretty, you know, party animal.
No.
Oh, okay, got it. Sure.
I was always like, the music industry was so weird because it's really kind of a cutthroat business if you work at a music label, and everybody was sort of just stabbing each other in the back, and they'd always look, and I got the impression they'd look at me like, who's that guy? You know, like, he's a tech guy, just leave him alone. So that's how you survive in music, because everyone else is like fair game, you know, and they're pulling the coke out from the back room. Anybody want any coke? And I'm like, hey, I'm just the geek here. I don't do coke, you know. So I just build some software, you know.
You drink Pepsi, right? You don't drink.
So that's kind of my story.
So in 2008, Napster was purchased by Best Buy for $121 million. And, well, that was before. So that happened after you left. But I'm sure a lot of things that you've done there was contributed.
And actually, and then later, I think it's part of Rhapsody now, effectively. And if you know this, but Rhapsody still uses the Napster brand for all the international service. They only use the Rhapsody brand in the U.S., so it's still alive. But I didn't tell the story about. I mean, we were so aggressive trying to, you know, get this service out there. We actually built the back end for the NTT Docomo music service in Japan to feature phones, if you can imagine that. That was before the smartphone era. So there's a lot of stuff that still survives out there with Rhapsody. But Spotify is obviously the one who's, you know, taking the idea and running with it now.
I didn't want to take too much time on the Napster because I had asked questions about WebMD and then also the AOL Verizon merger, which I'm sure we have a lot of questions on that, so I'm going to move pretty quickly on this. The WebMD story, that was, you were there for 2007 to 2014, so you left just actually recently. How did you get involved with WebMD? I mean, WebMD is the largest healthcare portal platform since 2007. Between 2011 and 2014, it went from 85 million uniques to 160 uniques a month, essentially doubling its traffic within 3 years. You must have been pretty busy as the CTO and COO. What was the?
Well, I got recruited.
How did you scale it? How did you scale that operation?
Well, we have a great brand. We owned a lot of different properties. So WebMD.com, we owned a lot of owned and operated sites as well. MedicineNet, eMedicine. We owned. They still own the largest physician portal site under the Medscape brand. If you're a doctor, you use Medscape. So the brand was really powerful. We kicked it on SEO. This was kind of the pre-social era, but we were killing it on SEO. And a lot of growth was coming through there. We started building a lot of mobile apps and started getting into social a little bit before I left. But the brand was powerful. We had great content. We had great features. We had sort of the iconic tools too. The WebMD symptom checker. We actually built that into an app in 2008. I think we built our first mobile app, iOS app, and probably about 4 months after the iTunes Store launched. And we just grabbed the symptom checker and our drug lookup tool, and it's like, if you're a hypochondriac, it's like, you can go to town with this because, you point to the body and you get all the symptoms. What do the drugs do? Oh my God, the drugs, make my hair fall out. So we just had, I'm being funny obviously, but the content is great, the services are great. When people aren't thinking about healthcare every day, it's very episodic, but when you're worried about something, you're very worried. And so, page view, PV per UV, if you follow the metric, was like hundreds, It's like, oh wow, what kind of engagement you get? When they're feeling good, you get high engagement.
How many health tech startups do we have in here? Do we have any health tech guys here? Okay, then I'm not going to ask you about your opinion about healthcare trends. Do you have
well, so my wife is a physician, so that was one of the reasons I was attracted. Well, healthcare is actually a really hard space, and I didn't do this intentionally, but I ended up working in space. I ended up doing things that are really hard. Like music was really hard. It actually is still really hard. I mean, nobody's making any money on music still, and healthcare is the most underserved market for IT, right? There's so much that can be done in the healthcare space. You walk into a doctor's office, you fill out the clipboard for the 10th time. They don't know what medicines you're taking. You can't actually email the doctors in a lot of cases because it's not allowed under HIPAA. So there's so much you could do to use technology to go beyond just serving content, and that was kind of the vision. But it's very, very hard in healthcare. So healthcare as a space is difficult. But I'm fascinated by it. I think there's a lot of potential there, and there's actually a lot of activity in the world at large around healthcare startups, but it's not an easy space to operate in.
Okay. All right, I want to move on to the AOL story here. I mean, we could spend all day talking about healthcare. And the reason why I think that healthcare is important is because this is actually, we're near Baltimore. We're actually for Air Health Tech, so I don't know, maybe it'd be useful for us.
I'm happy to talk about healthcare more. What else do you want to know about it? I mean, there's a lot. I know most of the startups in the space, and I kind of know what's happening in both what we would call the provider side of the business, so serving physicians, and also the consumer side. So,
well, what do you think about startups, like ZocDoc, right? I mean, that's supposed to be the decacorn in New York. This is sort of like the Yelp for doctor reviews. Yeah, you think?
I met the ZocDoc founders like my second week on the job at WebMD, and I was kind of intrigued with the idea. It's like, oh, it's open table for doctors. You kind of immediately get it. And with WebMD, we're constantly trying to move into more utilities, right? What can we do beyond content? Because there's a healthcare journey people go through. I'm concerned. What could it be? I read some content. Oh, how do I get a good physician? Then how do I make an appointment? So I think what they've done is great. I think there's a lot. Healthcare is very complex, right? And you think about the non-technology dynamics. And I'm a big fan of ZocDoc, I should say. But they mostly started with dentists, and there's it's not really been. They haven't really had the full impact on the traditional physician space. Good physicians don't take a lot of good physicians don't take new patients. So you kind of have to think about where you're really serving the market, right? Is it kind of like we would say like a remnant strategy, like hey, I want to fill my unfilled appointments with people who come in through ZocDoc, or am I really getting high quality? So there's a lot of dimensions around that make it complicated.
Hashtag Ryan at William Pence, CTO. So I'm going to get right into the AOL story here. And Napster was a huge disruptor in the music industry. WebMD, same sort of thing with healthcare, health tech industry. It seems like you had sort of an affinity to disruptive startups. So before the Verizon merger, AOL wasn't, really synonymous with, being disruptive. What sort of attracted you to AOL while it's still trying to reinvent itself?
It wasn't the obvious choice for me initially, but if you follow the AOL story the last few years, since the spin-out from Time Warner and since Tim Armstrong became CEO, it is kind of a pretty disruptive company. It's been completely reinvented, right? So on the content side, we purchased a number of brands that have been high flyers, Huffington Post, TechCrunch. Some people know we own these properties, some don't. But they're very disruptive, innovative content players. And then on the what we call our platform business, we've really created one of the most sophisticated ad technology stacks out there through acquisition and integrating that. So very, very strong player, up there in the same league with the Googles of the world. So I think we're very disruptive. I saw it as a turnaround. I'm attracted to a challenge, sometimes to a fault, and I came to work for Tim. And I like to work for people who are aggressive and visionary and kind of a little bit of a maniac. And I say that in the most affectionate possible way. I love working for Tim. Because we are constantly thinking every day, what can we do? This internet thing there is no way this is game over. I've been doing this a long time, and I remember I went out in, I don't know what year it was, 2003. I went to Friendster. Does anybody remember Friendster? And they were like the most arrogant guys ever. It's like we locked it up, okay. And then I met the MySpace guys a few years later, and the Friendster guys were roadkill, and the MySpace guys were like, locked it up. And I remember I started heard about Facebook, and they were like, world needs another social network. So nothing is locked in, right? I mean, even Google today, the search franchise is under threat, continually, because behavior changes, right? People use apps now, and it's not the desktop, go to the Google search box era that it was a few years ago. So there's nothing fixed in the internet space, and I think with AOL we have turned it into something that few people would have believed we could have done. I think the Verizon acquisition is evidence of what we built, and those tools combined with where the world is going in terms of mobile delivery and distribution is a powerful combination. So it's really just now the beginning of yet another kind of big transformation we're trying to do around mobile and video.
So back again, when I talk about the AOL, how it's reinventing itself. I used to work for AOL back in the .com days. I actually work out of the AOL fishbowl now. We just celebrated its 30th anniversary, and as you know, 30 years in the internet years is sort of like 300 years in human years. It's like it's pretty old. So a lot of the .com era companies. Like Apple and Amazon, they're always constantly trying to reinvent themselves, right? So what are you, I know that you've been in AOL for a short period, but what are sort of the things that you're trying to implement in the company to sort of say, hey, let's go back to our startup roots? Are you now trying to implement these startup ideas? So break things, fail faster, it's more the lean startup.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be fair to say it's exactly like a startup, because we're a top 5 internet player, right? We're the top 5 web properties on the planet, so we have a lot of scale. And when you get into making money on the internet, it's often about scale. So I think from a day-to-day point of view, yes, we do that. We have to break down barriers to moving quickly. So I've tried to change the culture there quite a bit, right? We have moved the entire company to Gmail as our Gmail platform. We use Google Apps across all of our companies. We just rolled out Slack to the whole enterprise, right? We're moving all of our facilities.
You guys aren't using AIM?
We still use AIM, but I have kind of a I don't get obsessed with the past. AIM is a great product. It's got a place in the world, but we're not going to. But there's 100 other things to do, and we have to keep moving, right? I worked at IBM back in the '90s, and I remember. There was a period where, again, I'm dating myself, but IBM lost the operating system to Microsoft, right? And it was like the most mortal wound because IBM created DOS, right? And for 3 years, there's the obsession of how are we going to get Windows back from Microsoft? My God, the world is over, we're finished. Lou Gerstner came in, and I looked through that Lou Gerstner, and he's like, just get over it, it's done. Just move on. And when you kind of let go of that baggage, and there's 100 other things to invent. So I think with AOL, we're trying to create a different environment. We're trying to move a lot faster, smaller teams, but we also want to leverage scale. And that's what we've done with the advertising platforms. And when we think about where the world is going, we don't think, oh, is it desktop or mobile? I mean, the world is now mobile. Desktop, in my mind, and I think in our mind, that's like an ancillary screen. So there are times when you need a desktop because you're creating something or you need to do a PowerPoint or whatever. Great, go use a desktop. I remember at WebMD, we started tracking mobile consumption of our website probably in like 2010, and I remember when it crossed 5%, we had a betting pool going, well, do you think it'd be 10%? And then the finance guys are like, well, when is it going to stop? Because of the mobile monetization thing. And I would say, I don't know, maybe level out at 30 or 40%. I mean, it's shooting and still going for every web property, and I think where we're ending is like 90-10. So the world is a mobile internet. So I think we look at things like, what does a mobile internet look like? How are people consuming video? And it's part of the Verizon acquisition because Verizon is making big investments in video. And I think we're seeing now in our own world and through the polls we do, millennials are basically using smartphones in the home more than they use them outside the home. They don't use them to make phone calls. They're now video consumption devices and social networking devices. So we're thinking about where the world's going from that perspective and how can we provide platforms to monetize it, how can we get our content into that world, and how can we create new utilities to help deliver it.
I wanted to talk about this term you use a lot in your talks, culture and code. What is it? What do you talk about and why is it important? You use that term a lot.
Yeah, I think it's Tim's term that he's invented for a while. And and I think when that first came out, I wasn't with the company, but my observation is that it did puzzle people a lot. But if you're inside kind of what's been happening in internet media the last few years, there's a lot of people saying, aha, we get it now. Because WebMD is a pure web publisher, and other people, we use other platforms to monetize. We work with Google and a lot of other people, but it's essentially a publisher. And with AOL, we have these large-scale web properties, what we call our owned and operated properties, and we have our own ad tech platform that we use to monetize those. So we're kind of eating our own dog food as an advertiser, but we use the same platform to monetize video and other websites across a large network. So the culture side is Huffington Post, TechCrunch, our new Build series, all the great content.
Premium content.
Premium content, and the code side is we're creating the underlying platforms that help to deliver it, distribute it, monetize it, et cetera. And having both of those, number one, it makes you a better platform provider because you're living every day with customers, who are using platform, and it makes you better able to innovate around ad formats and content delivery and that kind of thing. So it was a unique model, I think, when it came out. I don't think the world looks at it as, I don't get it anymore. I think everyone pretty much understands it.
So maybe I should ask this question because, when you're so the AOL Verizon merger, there are pretty much two different companies with two different cultures. How do you sort of, technically, how would you like mesh the two companies together using this code and culture?
Well, the way the merger is working is we're operating independently. So from the Verizon point of view, they have done so well on the network side, right? Dominant player in wireless, Fios, et cetera. But they see the world moving to, the pipes are used to deliver content, and they want to begin to participate in content and other monetization above the network level. And so the AOL acquisition was really a first step in that regard. So they're keeping us separate because they really are different skills. The Verizon engineering culture is very, very strong, but they are communication people, right? They lay fiber, they build towers, and we are an internet culture. So we're trying to preserve the best of both. So where we intersect is, how do we deliver content on those wireless networks, that kind of thing, but we're not looking to blend them because they're very different. And
don't you eventually think that it's going to blend in? Because you have the culture, which is the premium content, and you have the code, which is, that's Verizon, right? They have all this infrastructure, deep engineering there.
I don't think it's quite as simple as AOL's the content and Verizon's the code. I would say that the culture meets code concept is really an internet concept. Verizon's a communication company, right? They move bits around and they do a great job at it, but I think the world is moving toward more of an integrated delivery systems. So will it blend? It'll certainly blend, but I mean, we're trying to make sure that we keep the best of both worlds. And over time, I think we'll deliver a blended culture, right? And so hopefully the things that I bring to the company in terms of the way we develop software, the kind of tools we use, will influence the way Verizon works, and we'll also pick up some learnings from them as well.
So I wanted to go back to when you mentioned that you guys are sort of using more of the open tools. You mentioned that AOL wanted to be a cloud-first company. I'm assuming everything's running on AWS.
We're moving things over.
Moving things over. So, do you plan on getting rid of all your dedicated, servers to put in the cloud? So
that is the strategy. Yeah, that is strategy. The strategy is cloud first, and we're moving to cloud. Having said that, I mean, we take a pragmatic view of how do you accomplish that, right? So for each one of the products or platforms that we have a plan to move it, but we have to do re-architecture to take advantage of elasticity in the cloud. We have to think about how it's going to be run geographically, et cetera. And then you have to have a plan to move it in a responsible way, right? So everything moves at a different pace. Some things move very rapidly, some things take longer. So we're kind of providing this forcing function. Over the long term, yes, I think we'll be out of the data center business, but that could take a few years, right? And I think when, I was just at the AWS Summit last week, and that's where most companies are. I was on the stage with the CIO of GE. I mean, and I think it's a real statement as to where public cloud has gone when you have GE standing up and saying, we're moving to public cloud, and that's where it's really evolved to. So yeah, that's our strategy, and we're moving along. We're not 100% over there, but a good chunk is on its way.
I wanted to switch gears and sort of talk about your ad tech stack. It's called Whatwell. Facebook and Google are so dominant in this space with advertising, and everyone's sort of wanting to have that alternative. They have a third choice. So what is One AOL? How is it differentiating itself from Facebook, which is sort of like the people-based marketing machine, and then Google? How are you guys different?
So I would say that kind of everybody has their own special flavor or their own special approach to things, and it's a very dynamic space, right? What we built with One is we're taking the online advertising world sort of to the next level. So we've assembled, platforms for delivering ads. We've also delivered platforms for measuring impact of ads, to targeting them on a personal basis through data that we have, and also looking at what we call sort of attribution. So we bought some companies that help you to understand, from a marketer's point of view, how do I deploy money across different digital channels, and how do I track that all the way through to did the transaction happen at the end? It's sort of closed loop marketing, if you will. So One is kind of a single pane of glass system that lets you, attack the whole end-to-end ad delivery, ad journey, if you will, for a marketer. And we use that platform across our own sites, and we use it to monetize lots of other websites. That's kind of our approach. It's kind of a very open approach. And while it has these end-to-end systems, it's also very respectful of the fact that some publishers and some advertisers have their own components they've either already built or partnered with. So if you have data to bring to that, that's fine. If you have a DMP you're already working with, we can work with that as well. So it's an open platform, but it's end-to-end. That's kind of our sauce. It's kind of open, end-to-end, future-looking. I think, Google obviously has been mostly relying on the search franchise for a long time, done very well with that. And I think that the bigger, newer player you mentioned is Facebook, and sort of the people-based marketing thing, which is, their kind of spin on this is, well, everything's inside Facebook, right? It's a closed ecosystem. We know what we know about people from what they disclose in the social feed, and we're going to start building ads into the feed. And so it's powerful also, but it's different. It's a closed system. If you put data into it, you don't get data back out. You kind of have a black box, and at the end of the day, Facebook tells you how things perform. Now, over time, a lot of these tactics are constantly flux. They're constantly changing, right? So, I mean, the use of data and sort of what we call people-based marketing is something that a lot of people are thinking about. So it won't be that everything stays the way it is, but everybody kind of comes at it from their own unique sort of set of assets.
So it's interesting how you talked about Facebook being in its own silo and doing the people-based marketing with its own feed. Now I want to get into the AOL Verizon merger, because I think this is sort of, you guys can have a play in your own silo, so to speak, right? So AOL, Verizon, I think, so Verizon has like all this information. We're talking about billing data, household data. You take out your phone. I'm a Verizon user. It knows what apps I use, how long I'm on it, the engagement time on this phone, and how I'm behaving, interacting with my phone. And Verizon has close to 100 million users, so they have a very large captive audience. My question here is, Verizon owns Fios, internet. Do you see a time where, again, let's go back to Facebook, how you can differentiate yourself. Do you see that Verizon Steeler app like so many times now, and I have Fios? Could it be conceivable that now Verizon could be sending, I don't know, video personalized ads to me while I'm watching TV? How's that going to look like? I mean, is that sort of the future?
I think that you have to understand is if you follow the online ad market, right, and most people know this, setting aside Verizon or anything to do with the Verizon merger, the internet ad marketplace is already fairly sophisticated, right? So people do retargeting on the web all day long. So it has nothing to do with Fios. You might get an ad. You might be on Fios Internet Home and get an ad. It's the Zappos ad because you just were on Zappos. That happens today. Nothing to do with it because people are already using data to quote retarget. And Facebook is certainly taking the next level with what they're doing with person level data and targeting on interest. So it's really not a new phenomenon. I'd say the interest in cross-screen marketing has been out there for a while, and it kind of is really from a marketer point of view. What you want. You want to be able to deliver ads that are relevant to the user and that are in the moment when a decision is impending, and that implies often mobile, right? Because you're out and about with mobile, and we said mobile's now the preferred platform. So there's a lot of ways you can take advantage of that to say, should I put an offer out? Should I put an ad out? Even the use of geo-targeting, right? Which is another thing that's made possible in the industry generally, right? So you walk down the street, you walk past a Starbucks, and coupon pops up with an ad for Starbucks.
And how would I be retargeted on ads, say, when I'm watching Fios? How's that going to play out? Is it going to be
I don't know. We're not really that. I mean, we think about linear TV from a marketer point of view, but we're really focused on the digital space right now. Really focused on the digital space, as I said earlier. I mean, we're seeing this massive shift from desktop to mobile. Mobile has a lot of work to do generally to build better ad experiences on mobile. Facebook is trying to do that through what they're doing inside the app. There's other native formats and other things that people experimenting with. So I think we want to just get better at really addressing the mobile space. And over time, we'll see how the other screens. Besides TV, there's a million other screens that are evolving as well, too, and lots of other devices that are coming out, in the marketplace. So we'll see where that goes.
One of the questions that my friend wanted me to ask you, he's a technical guy.
Who's your friend?
I can't. He's from AOL too, so So, with the acquisition, of AOL with Verizon, it was considered one of the most disruptive mergers, right? But we've kind of seen this kind of merger with AOL Warner, right? Time Warner. So, what will make it different this time? I mean, what will make it successful versus the latter?
Well, I wasn't around for the Time Warner merger, so but there's been a lot written about it. I mean, it's a different era, right? I mean, you have to remember, there were still probably 40% of people on dial-up back then, right? So, it's like with everything, the devil's in the details. Conceptually, I think the idea still has merit, and you see Time Warner, Comcast trying to buy NBC, right? So you see these kind of partnerships, and I think the reason this was disruptive is because there is merit in kind of just watching where the world's going and figuring out how can you build a more powerful enterprise around it. So, I just think we're in a different era now, and Verizon, with their mobile platform is got a great relationship with consumers, a great service, and they should be a player in the space, just like all the other carriers. So I think you're going to see the carriers and the ISPs all think, what's my place in the world, and I suspect you'll see more of this.
That's interesting because now after this merger, everyone's thinking, wow, okay, what else is going to happen, right? Potential other industry mergers. So, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile, I mean, they also need to have an entry into this whole mobile, advertising technology. Do you see a potential AT&T buying Yahoo, a Google buying a Sprint, a Facebook buying a T-Mobile?
Your guess is as good as mine. I really don't have any insight into that. In my experience in this space is everybody's always looking at everybody, right? Because it's like I said before, this space doesn't stay still. So last year, maybe something didn't look like a very good idea, and suddenly this is the hottest thing. So I really have no idea, but I'm sure everything's, being discussed.
That's fair enough.
That fair enough?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
He wants me to make stock choices.
I think I might stock trader on listening to this. Okay, that's fine. Actually, when I heard about the whole AOL and Verizon merger, everybody else was talking about AOL and Yahoo would make more sense putting those companies together because you got the Google, Facebook, Twitter. Those guys own the whole ad space. Like, didn't you think that sort of made more sense? Or now that you...
Well, that was talked about so much. I mean, I think you guys can read what was said about it, right? I mean, I think most of the speculation was around... First off, I have to say, I think a lot of the talk around that was, again, I think another positive statement about what we've accomplished at AOL, right? I mean, the turnaround at AOL, even before it really hit everybody's radar with the Verizon deal, if you're in the industry, you really know what's been accomplished. And the fact that they're talking about Yahoo and AOL, I think is a testament to the fact that, we clearly had the ad platform that was desired, and so there was some synergy around content and some things, but, I never really pay that much attention to those things day to day. You kind of go crazy if you do that. And frankly, I think the Verizon AOL deal is when, the reaction usually you get is like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, but when you reflect on it, it really is quite strategic.
I wanted to talk about the future of publishers. I don't know if you just saw on TechCrunch, they had this article that talked about Facebook and Twitter having this product called Instant Articles and Moments, where content's it's stripped down, and the reader actually never sees where the article came from. There's no reference to the website. How will this affect publishers? I mean, it seems like a pretty bad trend happening here in the ad industry.
Well, there's been innovation in content distribution on the web for a long time, right? I mean, Flipbook came out years ago, and there's even even moving content to mobile.